Right. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar, Storytelling for Advocates. My name is Shelby Berger, and I'm the Manager of Policy and Advocacy here at the Cancer Support Community. So today you will hear from our incredible guest speaker, Heather Hall, who is a 3-time cancer survivor, national cancer advocate, speaker, writer, and so much more. Heather is going to talk to us about storytelling and why it is so important and impactful in advocacy, and how you can tell your story with impact and really affect change. So just a little housekeeping to begin. All our participants will be muted during Heather's presentation. So if at any time you have a question for Heather, please feel free to type it into the discussion box on the bottom right hand of your screen. And at the end of the presentation, we will unmute and open to questions from the audience, as well as address the questions that we've received in the Q&A box. Before we start, I just wanted to give everybody a little background about CSC for those who may not be familiar with the organization. The Cancer Support Community is the largest nonprofit network of cancer support worldwide. So CSC, along with our Gilda's Club affiliates, is dedicated to ensuring that all people impacted by cancer are empowered by knowledge, strengthened by action, and sustained by community. CSC achieves its mission through 3 areas. So the first is our direct service delivery. Through over 40 CSC and Gilda's Club locations, more than 120 satellite locations, and a dynamic online community, CSC provides more than $40 million in free personalized service to more than 1 million people impacted by cancer across the country. Next, we have our Research and Training Institute in Philadelphia, which is the only entity of its kind dedicated to cancer-related psychosocial, behavioral, and survivorship research. So the RTI has contributed to the evidence base regarding the cancer patient experience through various publications and peer-reviewed studies using data collected by CSC's Cancer Experience Registry, which is a unique online community of over 13,000 cancer patients, survivors, and caregivers that provides people facing cancer with opportunities to share their experiences, identify common issues, participate in surveys, and a lot more. The third area is our Cancer Policy Institute, located here in Washington, D.C. So at the CPI, we work to bring together patient advocates with policy experts to really elevate the patient voice and ensure that the needs and experiences of cancer patients play a central role in federal and state legislative, regulatory, and executive policy making. Patients are really at the center of the work of the CPI. We utilize the leading edge data from our Research and Training Institute to support our policy positions with evidence that is based in the patient experience. So the CPI also engages in advocacy powered by our grassroots network of thousands of advocates across the country. Through our online platform, we provide updates on policy issues that could have an impact on the health and well-being of cancer patients and survivors, and offer opportunities for advocates to make their voices heard with federal and state policymakers. So you can head over to cancersupportcommunity.org for more information on our affiliates, the Cancer Experience Registry, the Grassroots Network, or any of our educational materials and support resources. So as I mentioned previously, our speaker, Heather Hall, is a national cancer advocate, speaker, and writer. A 3-time cancer survivor, Heather is focused on living life to the fullest. Diagnosed with osteosarcoma at 21, melanoma at 27, and breast cancer at 43, she is committed to sharing her story to help others facing this disease and working to make a positive difference in the fight against cancer. Heather's sister is also a melanoma survivor, and her dad died from multiple myeloma, motivating her even more. Heather has spoken at events across the country and led sessions and programs relating to sharing your cancer story, communication strategies, and community involvement. She helped plan a national conference for young adult cancer survivors and served on several committees to help improve patient care and survivor plans. Heather has also participated in advocacy events at the local, state, and federal levels since her bone cancer diagnosis. So she regularly meets with legislators and staff to advocate for research, new treatment options, preventative screenings, and access to affordable care. She currently serves as a national Live Strong leader and the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network Team Lead Volunteer for the 9th Congressional District in Michigan, and volunteers for many organizations, including the Cancer Support Community, the National Coalition of Cancer Survivors, and Immerman Angels. Heather earned a BS in journalism from Central Michigan University and an MA in communications from Wayne State University. Her professional background includes leadership positions in healthcare, nonprofit, financial, and education, and she has also served on numerous nonprofit boards. So with that very impressive resume, I will turn things over to Heather.
Thank you, Shelby. I'm like, who's that woman you're talking about? Thank you very much. And thanks again to all of you for tuning in and talking about this. Is one of my favorite subjects to talk about, so I'm really excited to be here. If you want to advance, so you'll just advance the slides, right, Shelby?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Next slide then. I'm not seeing them advance.
Uh-oh. You're not seeing the About Me slide?
Nope. Mm-mm. Now I do.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that.
Yeah, okay. No, that's okay. No problem. So, okay, so I'm not going to go into too much more detail since Shelby gave that flattering bio, but just a little bit about me. And also I wanted to also back up a little bit and share my experience and connection with the cancer support community. When I was diagnosed at 21 with bone cancer, I was treated locally, and the local Gilda's Club actually was just opening up when I finished treatment. So it was a perfect opportunity for me to go and meet other cancer survivors and really get involved. And I became a member and started attending the support groups and the social programs there. And just, it was an amazing experience and really, really helped me embrace being a cancer survivor and meet other people. And after that, I had the great opportunity to become a volunteer and get involved. And then shortly after that, I was offered a position at Gilda's Club, so I became a staff member. So I've had the wonderful opportunity to be involved with the organization on multiple levels, and was also part of the organization when they started the advocacy and grassroots side. So it's super cool to see the program grow and to be part of it now. And I share my background with you just so you know why being an advocate is really important to me and why I love the idea of people being able to share their story to make a positive impact for cancer survivors. In full disclosure, you'll see that I have a public relations and marketing background, and so this topic makes me a little bit geeky about communications. Shelby, if you want to advance, please. So my cancer's impact on my personal story is a little big and more in depth than I want it to be, but as I mentioned, I was diagnosed with osteosarcoma at 21. I was 3 months shy of graduating from Central Michigan with my bachelor's degree. I was diagnosed and ended up starting chemo about 10 days after my diagnosis. I had in all 13 months of chemo. In between that, I thankfully was able to save my leg and did a limb salvage surgery that replaced my femur and my tibia, the upper tibia, with titanium. So I did graduate in between chemo treatments, and I did that a couple of years later. I noticed a mole had been changing, and I didn't like it, and I thought it looked suspicious, so I went to the doctor, and he removed it, and it ended up being early stage melanoma. Thankfully, I just had additional surgery and didn't have to do any more chemo or further treatment. And after that, I felt like everything was moving forward and looking fantastic, and in December of last year, I went in for a routine mammogram. My doctor is very adamant about having 3D mammograms, and so thankfully she was, because a shadow actually on the mammogram looked suspicious enough to the tech that she did a couple more images, and lo and behold, I was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. And so I decided to do a lumpectomy. I qualified for a lumpectomy, and then I was only supposed to do radiation with it, but unfortunately my oncotype score came back high. So it was recommended that I do chemotherapy, which would drop my reoccurrence rate from 30% down to 3%. So I finished chemo 2 weeks ago, and I'm in the middle of radiation. On top of all of that, about a year after my bone cancer diagnosis, my dad was diagnosed with late-stage multiple myeloma. He was originally given 3 months to live, but thank you to everybody who's out there advocating for new research and treatment options, he was able to live 6 years before passing away from the disease. And then last year, my younger sister, also noticed a suspicious mole on her arm and went into the doctors, and sure enough, it came back invasive melanoma. Again, thankfully, she was able to catch it. Even though it had become invasive, it was still early enough that she underwent a couple surgeries. So as you can see, this all really has made it really impactful for me, and the advances that we've done, the research that we push, the advocacy that we do, my family alone is just one example of the impact that all of us can make. Next slide. So before we touch on ways to share your story, I just want to talk a little bit about why we might want to share our cancer stories and how we can do that. Go ahead. So anytime, there's a lot of reasons that you might want to share your story, and having goals help you stay focused. So anytime I share my story, I ask myself, or I find out if I've been invited to share my story, what is the goal or outcome that I want to achieve? This helps me best prepare how I'll share my story to have the most positive impact on who receives the story. And so these are some of the reasons that you may want to share. We can talk about how it helps other cancer survivors, caregivers, and others from your story. It also puts a face on the issue or the disease, the treatment side effect. That way, when you're talking about research dollars or you're meeting with your legislator, seeing a face to it or seeing a personal human side to it really can bring it on home on what we're trying to make, the goal that we're trying to achieve. You can also influence change in legislation and policy. You can also, sharing your story helps impact healthcare decisions and survivorship plans and treatment ideas. I've heard lots of cancer survivors talk about things that they had happen or didn't have happen, and those type of sharing can help, again, especially with the survivorship plans or treatment ideas. Sharing your story also raises awareness of the programs and services available in the cancer community. For instance, I shared how I attended a Gilda's Club program after my treatment and how the support group and all of the social activities that I participated in really, really helped me. And so by me sharing that, I'm able to encourage other people to attend those programs also. Sharing can also motivate others to take action, get involved, and learn. And it increases the power of sharing with our voice. I'm a big believer that one person can start a positive change to inspire and motivate others to make powerful positive change. So your story impacts others and can really help influence positive change. Just always keep that in mind. Next slide. So telling your story with purpose. You know, anytime, again, you want to get out there and share your story, what is your end goal and what purpose are you trying to achieve? These are some key things that I try to keep in mind, and I encourage you to. So all of us touched by cancer have a story to share, whether you're the cancer survivor, whether you're a caregiver, family member, or friend. We have all been touched by cancer, and we can all share something. Passion and dedication to helping others is really key when you're sharing your story. And we're all advocates. Always keep that in mind, that no matter how you've been impacted or what your story is, you're an advocate for helping others and yourself. And we are experts of our own cancer story. Nobody knows your cancer story better than you. And have a point or purpose when you're sharing. And learn about an issue. Become an expert. Tie your story into the issue. There's so many issues out there that I always tell myself I can't be an expert at every issue, but I found some that I'm a lot more passionate about, and those are the ones that I focus on and that I really teach myself about, and I kind of tie my story into. Next slide. So when you're getting ready to share your story, know your audience. So different audiences can have different angles of what you might share. Education is necessary. One of the big things I always say is don't assume that just because someone is a cancer survivor, for instance, he or she understands all the treatment options. For instance, I was a cancer survivor of bone cancer and melanoma before my breast cancer diagnosis, but I had no idea the variety of treatments and variations of breast cancer until I was actually diagnosed with it. So I've had to go through my own relearning and learning so much information and taking it all in. And the other thing, another example I always will use is that, just because somebody is a legislator or a legislative staff, don't assume that they're an expert on a healthcare topic either. They might be newer, or it might not be an area that they are really, up on. So always tailor for your audience. Who are you trying to influence? Again, is it, a senator? Is it a cancer center director? Is it another cancer survivor? Tailor your message to that person or the people that you're speaking to. And, what do you want to accomplish with your message, with sharing your message? Next slide. And then tie in, your cancer connection. Make it personable to connect with your audience, whether you're sharing in person or online. You want to tie your cancer connection into the message that you're sharing. Personable, I can't stress this enough. Bringing a human touch to it, making it personable is really what can help influence and can help and make the positive impact. Go ahead. So this is a little reminder from my journalism degree. We always said KISS, to keep it simple, silly. You've probably heard it. It's kind of popular. But this is something that I constantly am reminding myself of when I'm sharing. So whether you're meeting with legislators, whether you're reading social media posts, your audience attention is only a short amount of time to share a message. So you want to keep it simple. And I have a few tips for that in the next slide. These are just some quick tips to get you started. So write your bullets to see your story in a short, concise information. This is regardless if you're speaking it and going to speak it aloud, or if you're going to write it in social media, or you're going to write a letter to the editor. I oftentimes will just write my story out in very short, concise bullets so that I kind of see what it is that I want to share and gather all my thoughts out. And then I practice speaking my story aloud so that it comes natural and quick. And I time myself too. But whether it's, I was last week in D.C. and we had to share our story with our legislators as we were getting ready to ask them to support some of the issues that we wanted. And, I'm a big elevator speech. So how can I get this out? And again, mine continues to grow, unfortunately, but still, how can I get it in, 1 to 2 minutes and still make a really positive impact? And so when I'm working on sharing my story and making it into those concise, short sound bits, I also want to, keep in mind what is the goal and the point of me sharing. And the next slide. So look for the story ideas that really relate to you. And you may, be surprised by what some of these story ideas are, but there's so many different angles. And I sometimes will write down various issues or topics that I'm passionate about, and then I tie my cancer story in, whether it's my cancer story or my dad's or my sister's or another family or friends into it. And so I can look for as many angles as I can. And this helps me keep my storytelling fresh since I tend to share a lot. Last week when I was in D.C., I had multiple meetings and I'd met with some of the staffers already. So I wanted to kind of take a different angle on the topics that we were talking about. You just might be surprised by what your angle or tie-in is, which is why I like to look at it. So, some examples I put up here were preventative screenings, mammogram, colonoscopy, wellness checks. Did those catch your cancer? As I mentioned, a 3D mammogram, a routine preventative screening is what caught my breast cancer. Research, how were you or your family member impacted by research? I think almost every single one of us who's been touched by cancer can say that research made a positive impact on our stories. New treatment. So did you or someone benefit from new treatment options, or could new treatment have helped somebody that or helped yourself? If we had pushed and, prodded more for better funding for research or more progress in research, could that have benefited you? Oral chemo versus IV chemo. This is kind of a hot topic in Michigan right now, the oral chemo parity. A lot of states have this already, but it's something that we've been working on here. And I will tell you, I've heard a lot of stories about how this negatively impacted the fact that there's not a parity between oral chemo and IV chemo. And affordability, access to care, affordable care is a really big topic. But again, you also want to look for different angles and think about things that maybe are out of the box angles for you that you can tie into. So one example I'll give you is that there's a Live Strong at School program for K through 12 graders, and it's teaching age-appropriate information to kids about cancer. And while I'm not a parent, I have nieces and nephews who are in the school, and I was also treated in pediatrics during bone cancer, even though I was 21. So I interacted and saw a lot of children who were touched by cancer at young ages, and they didn't quite understand it. So this program is something that I'm super passionate about because I know what a huge benefit it is. And another example is the value of mental health and survivorship plans for cancer survivors. It wasn't until I attended a support group at Gilda's Club after my treatment that I realized how much I needed to interact with and meet other survivors my age and just other survivors in general. I got so much value out of attending a support group at Gilda's Club and just sharing information and having other people to talk to that it really became obvious to me how critical mental health programs are for cancer survivors. So again, just some examples of different angles that you can use to help tie your story in and keep it fresh. Next slide. So now I'm going to share some ways to tell your story. There's tons more, but these are some ways that I frequently share and have success with. So the first one is working with your elected local and federal representative. These are some ideas. Learn about an issue. Find a relationship between the story and your issue, between your story and the issue. Again, we talked a little bit about research or new treatment options, things that might be of value or a hot topic in your state or locally that you can tie into. And then schedule meetings at the state or federal level. Keep in mind that our federal representatives have several offices located in their state, so you don't have to go to DC to meet with them or their staff members. They have a lot of times during recesses, they'll come back to your state and you can schedule meetings for them. There's also a lot of coffee hours. I meet my state representative at our local Tim Hortons quite often. It's my favorite coffee shop and hers too. So we tend to meet there, and it's a great opportunity to kind of just meet one-on-one, pretty low-key, and we can talk quite a bit about the issues that, that are concerning me, and I can get some pretty good, honest feedback from her. So ensure your cancer connection to make your meeting and your request personal. Again, this is a way to put a face to the issue. Our representatives are constantly getting asked to support different, so many different topics and issues and funding and everything. And it's one thing to just give them numbers, which is important, and to talk about the issue, but it's also more important to me to share your story and to put that human touch on it. And then share how your story has been impacted by the issue you're talking about, whether it's research, whether it's preventative care, it's affordability, it's lack of new treatment options. There's always some tie-in that you can do. And then make sure that the staff knows you and your story too. Staff members are critically important to helping get our issues passed and to bringing things to the attention of our representative. I have worked really, really hard to develop relationships with my local and state staff members for our legislators, and I really think that's benefited so that when I walk in or I pick up the phone, I call them. I'm not, as much as I would like to pick up the phone and call Senator Stabenow, I don't have her direct line, but I do have direct line to her staff members. And they remember me because I've reached out to them enough, and we can kind of have a nice, honest conversation. And then don't forget to ask about their cancer connection too, if they're comfortable sharing it, because, and I found that almost all of them have been when I've asked that question, but it gives them a nice opportunity to share with you. And in a little way, it reminds them that the personal touch that they have to that, to, the disease too. Next slide. And then, keep connecting with your legislators throughout the year. Special occasions are great opportunities to share your story and contact your representative. Use social media. You can tag your representatives. I think almost all of them, particularly at the federal level, have social media, particularly Twitter handles. State is, I think all of mine do, but I know not everybody does, but still you can mention them. And then, small gifts or items to the offices. Sometimes I'll drop off for different holidays. And I'm a big proponent of sending cards, whether it's a personal thank you cards or just different cards to the representatives and the staff. And I've listed a couple ideas. So Valentine's Day, you can use the idea of, thanks for having a heart, or thanks for caring about cancer research. Thanksgiving, of course, is the obvious of saying thank you for what they do. National Cancer Survivors Day is coming up. It's the first Sunday of June. And every year I send cards to my representatives and their staff members saying if they're not cancer survivors, I know at least one of mine is a cancer survivor, so I'll make a note to that. But otherwise, I say thank you for letting me celebrate Cancer Survivors Day. Thank you for supporting, research funding and the different issues that we've worked on. And then your birthday is a great time, especially if you're a cancer survivor. Thank you for helping me have another birthday to celebrate. Your cancer anniversary, another great one. And then, any special occasion to you. Sometimes I'll send a card to my representatives on my dad's birthday just to say thank you for pushing research through and giving us more time with him. But again, it's just another opportunity to keep telling your story as it relates to the issue and the occasion. Next slide. So social media is a popular and easy opportunity to get your message out. I use this quite a bit. It's a great time to provide opportunity to engage with a larger audience, not just your own, family and friends, but, if you have a lot of followers and getting the message out. And you can still weave your personal story in with specific issues and goals. It's a great opportunity to educate on certain topics and then to drive people to call to action, whether it's sharing your message or your profile or your post or taking action, email, call, etc. Next one. So these are popular social media sites. There's so many more, but Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, a lot of legislators and nonprofits and other organizations commonly use these type of ones. So these are really popular and they're really easy to use. Next one. I won't get into details on how to use each of those social sites, but here are some general tips for success on using social media. Post pictures. Pictures speak 1,000 words. They're a really great way to get the message across, whether you're posting pictures of yourself, tying into an issue, yourself with legislators, at an event, anything. It's just a great way to, again, put that human touch into your post. And then don't forget to set your post to public for larger audiences and opportunities to share. For instance, my Facebook page is my personal page, but there are moments when I'll switch my post to a public so that more people can see it. And then again, always tie in your personal story to the issue and topic for greater awareness. The stories add a personal touch that pulls people into your story, even strangers. I have some examples coming up of, I use Instagram a lot to share. Twitter's my second favorite, but Instagram is a really big one for me to share stories. And so I'll post pictures and then, tie a little bit of my story in and then weave in the issue or the program or the education, program that I'm trying to raise awareness of. And then don't forget to use hashtags related to your story and or the issue. And so, the really great thing is to think about what issue or program or whatever point you're trying to make when you're doing your post, and do a little search first to see what's similar. I get a lot of really good ideas from seeing what other people have posted to or what other hashtags are being used for different things. And so that's a great way, because then someone like me will go and search for that, and I see what other people are posting, and I'll either follow or share or like their post. And then make it relevant. Again, tie into, if you're going to do a story on sharing something on cancer research funding and you need it, why should people care? Yes, you're asking for funding for research, but why should they care? And then don't forget to add that call to action. So should they reach out to their legislators? Should they visit a website? Should they donate to a nonprofit? Do you want them to share? Why are you putting all of this out on a post? And then don't forget to tag your legislators and organizations. I do a lot of posts, and if I'm sharing information on whether it's advocacy or programs, I'll tag somebody like, the Cancer Policy Institute or another organization, just to raise awareness of them too and help spread news about what they're doing. Next slide. So these are just a few of the social media examples that I wanted to share. You'll see that, so these are from Twitter, my Twitter account, and then my friend Jay is a phenomenal advocate, and he leads up to, he, for instance, is doing something for the American Cancer Society Relay for Life, and he's pretty passionate about it because his friend's daughter died from cancer, and he's become kind of the team captain. But I love that he'll tie everything in. He posts these different crazy pictures, and I have to say that he's a great example of using these pictures to capture attention, because I know every day he's posting a picture leading up to the event, and every day, I'm not going to lie, I will look at his Facebook page. I go to Facebook just to see what type of creativity he has done. And then you'll also see that I use Twitter to thank my senator. I just met with him last week in D.C. talking about, I tagged him, and I've already had his staff person had reached out to me just to say thanks and to say they really liked the picture and the post. So that was pretty cool to see that one. And then you'll see the cute picture of my dad. Cancer research has really made a huge impact, again, as I mentioned, in him living 6 years versus 3 months. So that was a big thing for us. So just ways to be able to use it. The one behind it, I talked about, that was a share that I had done. I was interviewed by a local television station, and by doing that, and I tagged them in it, and then they ended up retweeting mine and then reached out to me, and they've actually done some follow-up on the interview too, which was really cool. Next slide. And then this is just, again, a few more examples of this, talking about, I loved some of the announcements that Cancer Support Community has done recently, partnering up with Walgreens, and then also sharing some information on their sites. My friend Rogers, I love that he and his daughter, she's a teenager, they're both advocates on trying to raise the tobacco age and get really involved in all of that, which is awesome. And then I did The one on the bottom left, me looking in the funky helmet, is actually a cold cap. I was able to do cold cap therapy throughout chemo to save my hair this time. I lost my hair during bone cancer, and when the opportunity came to try cold capping to save my hair this last time, I jumped on it. So it has been a great opportunity to raise awareness of resources and to use social media to tell the story in this, because I've also been able to raise awareness of it with our legislators and with cancer center directors across the country, and work with a growing group of women to be able to raise awareness. So it's not as well known as I'd liked, and so as you can imagine, I'm kind of working to change that and jump on it. But again, just an example of ways to tie in, use a picture, it's not overly flattering picture, but to be able to use photos to raise some awareness of it, because I was able to get quite a few people reaching out to me wondering about it, which was really cool. Next slide. And then just finally a few more, again, just tying on the issue, cold capping of cancer resources. How can we really reach out and use the photos and our social media to do that? Next slide. So then a few other online opportunities. Letters to the editor is a great way to raise awareness of an issue, program, and challenge. It helps you keep the focus local and state, which is what will appeal to them. And again, another opportunity to tie your story in. Why does it matter to you? Letters to the editor are typically fairly short. They'll have, I think most of ours around here have 250 words or less. So my story I tie in is pretty short. It could be as simple as a 3-time cancer survivor and a daughter who lost her dad to cancer, blah, 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 blah. I just wrote one 2 weeks ago on here in Michigan, we're trying to make e-cigarettes and vaping part of the tobacco products, and it is not in our state. We're the last state in Michigan in the country to not have qualified it as that. So this time when I wrote my letter, I did say, the 3-time cancer survivor, and also as an aunt of nieces and nephew, this is why, protecting our youth matters to me. And so it's really easy, and it's easy to do. I mean, I just went online. All of ours are submitted online, and then I followed up a couple of days later. The cool thing about letters to the editor, it can also lead to some more attention from the media or legislators. I have received in the past an email or letter from a couple of my representatives who saw my letter to the editor and kind of just wanted to follow up, mostly to let me know where they stood on the issue and that they supported, but it was fantastic to do that. And then, as I mentioned, 2 weeks ago, I submitted one on the e-cigarette regulation, and it actually got bumped up to the editor, and I did an interview on it last week. So we're just waiting for the article to come out. But I thought, what a great way to raise more awareness of the issue. And then opinion editorials are just a little bit lengthier and a little more in-depth. Sometimes you have to pitch it a little bit more to an editor to do it, but a lot of newspapers will still let you do these. But again, it's a great way to share more detail on your issues and your program. And the next one. Online guest posts, some of ours locally, and I'm sure around you, they have opportunity for online newspapers, have blogs and other editorial post opportunities. So we have, like I said, 2 or 3 here that for their online version of their paper, they host different blogs, and you can reach out and, submit stuff. And then blogs are a great way to also be able to share your story. If you have a blog, you can certainly write away whatever you want to do. I have a blog that I use about, my focus is life after cancer. So sharing a lot of the different things you can do as a cancer survivor, whether it's traveling or it's resources or it's educating people. So I'm always trying to tie in just living your life to the fullest as a cancer survivor. But there's also a lot of great guest post opportunities on companies and other blogs. I have written numerous blogs for companies, various companies, health-related companies, cancer-related companies. Last year I wrote, I had the opportunity to write 5 or 6 for a blog or a website in the UK. And I'm not really sure how they found me, but it was a great opportunity to be able to share resources and, about life after cancer, living your fullest as a cancer survivor. So I personally belong to a few blogging communities online, a couple on Facebook and elsewhere. And for instance, people are always seeking guest blogs. So if you have a blog that you follow or you come across that you think would be a great fit, by all means, reach out to those people and ask if they have any interest in you doing a guest blog. And the next. So these are just a few examples from my own blog I wanted to share. I use these posts to include organizations like the Cancer Support Community or Livestrong or the American Cancer Society, helping to raise awareness of their programs and how it benefits cancer survivors. So again, just an opportunity to share what it means, how research is so impactful on how we can all work together, why you might want to advocate. And again, in all of these type of blogs, I tie in the various resources that people can, go after to go out to other organizations to get more involved. Next slide. And then community events, there's so many in every community. Metro Detroit has a ton of community events, looking at hospitals, health centers, health departments, various companies, nonprofits, others are always hosting events, and you can contact these organizations directly, share your background, connection, how you might be able to help. But a lot of these events will be opportunities. You can volunteer to be a guest speaker. You can join the committee, or volunteer at the event. You could host an information booth for one of the nonprofits or organizations that you either work for or volunteer for, that you really just want to be able to share and share information with the community. So, and again, you can check out a lot of the local community calendars. If you just go online and use Google, you can find a lot of different events in your community. Next slide. And then nonprofits and community involvement. Nonprofits love their volunteers to be engaged and help raise awareness of their programs and their services. As I mentioned, I have a nonprofit background, so I've run a couple of nonprofits. And one of the things I did while working at one of those was to create an ambassador program for volunteers to attend events on our behalf. We, we taught them all we needed to about the programs. We also, gave them some speaking tips and speaking training so that they could go out there. And it was a great win-win for both the organization and our volunteers. And so, share your knowledge and passion, getting involved in a nonprofit and, get to know their mission and their programs and services and how you can relate and share. And it will be a great help for them and for you. Next slide. So health centers and cancer centers, I think, are a great way to get also involved in the community. Getting involved, it helps you give back, particularly as a cancer survivor. I really have a hard time saying no when my cancer center reaches out. I'm in my third time, and they have saved my life 3 times. So I really like being involved with them and giving back. I've mentored cancer patients. I've sat on, survivorship committees. But it's also a great opportunity to learn about the needs of your community. And it helps you know what are the issues, what need attention for cancer patients, for caregivers, in a variety of roles. So, talk to your doctors and the medical team to learn of what's needed, what's necessary. I'm involved in multiple organizations, so when I hear that a patient, for instance, needs fertility assistance, I know that Livestrong has a phenomenal fertility assistance program, and I am more than happy to, share that information to make sure that the patients have what they need. I love mentoring other patients and or caregivers. It's a great way to, share my knowledge and to be able to help others. Sometimes the cancer centers will need help with support groups. I have several cancer survivor friends who have helped, they kind of help support the mental health professionals. They lead the support group. And then, a lot of the cancer centers and health centers are looking more and more, they're looking for the input from caregivers and survivors. And they have committees, and they're looking for the input so that yes, they have the medical team, but you as a cancer survivor might be able to say, well, that's great, but, it would have been nice if we had, maybe an extra private room so that for my infusion when I didn't feel good, I could sit in here. Or, it sounds funny, but when I went through bone cancer, it was all inpatient. And one of the things that drove me crazy was that I had to share a bathroom and, there wasn't a lot of privacy. So I ended up sitting on a committee for patients and the nurse practitioners and the nurse managers of the floors, and we got to share all of our, concerns and everything, and ended up tweaking a few things after, I shared my concerns, and others, once I shared my concerns, other patients started speaking up saying, oh, yeah, that is kind of annoying, or that is kind of weird to us, and so we were able to change a few things. And then, volunteer events or community programs. I know my cancer center, the local cancer center here, always has a lot of different programs, and they're always looking for people to help out and participate in them. So doing all of this and getting involved really will help you determine what resources are lacking and how can your story or your experience help close these gaps. And again, how can your involvement with different organizations be able to help you close these gaps by providing resources? How can you benefit them? Next slide. And then community organizations are often seeking speakers for meetings and programs. These are typically, I listed just a few of the ones that I've been involved with: the Rotary Club, the Optimist Club, churches and synagogues. I know there's a lot more different community organizations, but these type of groups are they're new audiences, and they're usually, you're usually educating them on programs that they might be unaware of. So it's a great opportunity to raise awareness of community programs or to get them involved in advocacy, to really share different stories. I gave a talk last fall to a group, and it was senior citizens, and I got the opportunity to talk about some of the organizations that I'm involved with. And one of the things that I brought up was that there's a gap in Medicare funding for colorectal cancer screening, and none of them knew about it, and yet all of them were really impacted by it. So it was a great opportunity for me to be able to share and to get them energized enough that they wanted more information on it. They wanted to call our senators right away. They wanted to call their representative. And it was just kind of cool to see, their energy and to see how engaged they became. But again, it was this perfect audience because the issue that I decided to bring up, it impacted them much more than me. So, another example is when I worked at Gilda's Club, we were always being invited by the Rotary Club and the Optimist Club to speak at their luncheons. It's, I'm pretty sure I spoke at one of these lunch programs every other week for the first 6 months that I worked at Gilda's Club. But it was such a great opportunity to get people involved. And many of these people in turn ended up becoming our volunteers, which was super cool. Next slide. So rounding it all up is kind of, use your connections to help tell your story with impact. And we all have so many different connections: our family and friends, our work, community groups, the cancer center staff, your care team, your support groups that you participate in, social media, networking groups. There's so many different ways that you can use your connections to share your story and to tell your story. And each of these, though, it's not even just, I don't want to say using your connections, but each of these people and these groups will in turn be able to help you out too. So, find out what can you do to help them. How can you be an advocate for them so that we all help positively impact cancer survivors and caregivers and anybody touched by cancer. Next slide. And then, just remember, have a goal in mind. Why are you sharing your story? Know your audience so that you can kind of tweak and work your story to each audience, and then share with purpose. Tie your story into an issue or a topic. Always remember, you are the expert of your own story. Nobody can tell your story better than you. And then speak with passion. You're making a positive impact on the fight against cancer, and everything that you do can really make a difference. And then if you have any questions, I think Shelby, there you go. I hear you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Heather. And it's so great to hear, like you said in your last slide, it's so important to speak with passion, and it's so clear, I think, to everybody tuned in today that you're really speaking with passion and have a real passion for sharing your story and advocating for others, which is just really cool and inspiring. So I'm going to unmute everybody and give them all an opportunity. If anybody has any questions, so please feel free to speak up or type them into the question and answer box. We have a few that came in through there, but I'll give everybody a chance real quick to see if anybody has a question they want to ask.
And then while we're waiting, Shelby, I just want to say thank you again to you and to the Cancer Poly Institute for the opportunity to share this and everything that you guys do. I really appreciate it. And then the next slide has all of my contact information. So for all of you listening, please don't hesitate to reach out in the future and let me know how you're doing sharing your story.
Thank you, Heather. This has been a great opportunity, and I think we've all learned a lot. All right, so I don't hear anybody speaking up, so I will read some of the questions that we got through the question and answer box.
Okay.
So the first question, do you have any suggestions of where to start if you've never been involved in advocacy or really told your story before?
Sure. Well, if you really want to get involved, and one organization, of course, is the Cancer Policy Institute right here. That is a great opportunity to kind of get in, to sign up and get involved and respond to the call to action. And, start putting your story together. And then whether you want to start tying it into social media, if you're active on social media, do that. And, the letters to the editor, or start reaching out to different organizations and see where you might help.
Great. We have another question. Okay, so is it important that you prepare your story ahead of time when meeting with members, with legislators, and bring materials, or is it better if you keep it more genuine and be off the cuff?
I always say prepare. Because a lot of it is, too, you don't really know how your meeting with the legislator is going to go. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 15 minutes. And so you just want to be prepared. So have your story, prepared, especially because sometimes we start talking pretty passionately or emotionally about our story. And, I'm guilty of it, too, where you kind of start talking and talking and talking. And this way, I know that if I have at least the basis of a story that I've prepared, if I get a little off subject, it's not a big deal because I can bring myself back. But walking in with a plan is always best when you're meeting with your legislators.
Perfect. That's super helpful, and I think that's something that we all encounter when we're trying to tell our stories. Like you said, we get so passionate and you want to share your experience, but it's important to find that balance between making sure that you're really, really sharing your story and being impactful, but also, recognizing that sometimes you have to keep it short and fit it into the time of the legislator who, wants to help and how you can do that succinctly.
Right. Yeah. And we've had, too, I've had staff tell me that one of the things they like is that, when they meet with constituents, that they know when the meeting's over, they know what the purpose was. So they meet with so many different people that if you stand out by saying, sharing your story, but then also, letting them know exactly what your purpose is, like we're here because we want you to support, $41.5 billion in research funding at the, National Institute of Health. They know exactly why I'm meeting with them, and they're going to remember that.
No, that's awesome. We have one more question here. So do you have any recommendations for people to follow on Twitter, on Instagram, if you want to get involved but you're not sure where to start on social media?
On who to follow? Is that kind of it?
Yes.
Okay. Sure.
I think,
so
people who are, really active and can help educate you.
Yeah, for sure. I always recommend that you follow all of your legislators, state and, local, state, federal legislators. And then, again, it comes down to, I will go on Twitter and I do searches. So I'll do a search for a hashtag of a certain topic that I want, cancer research or cancer advocate or cancer survivor. And I just kind of scroll. So it might take a little bit of time, but then I'll kind of go through and read different, organizations will pop up or people pop up. And then I follow, and then sometimes I'll click on those people to follow them, but then I see who they're following too. And I would say that particularly on Twitter, that's a lot of how I've found my followers or, the people that I like to follow too, is by clicking on that. I'm also, because I'm a journalism major and in PR and marketing, I'm kind of a news junkie. So I follow a lot of news, but there's also a lot of healthcare related news that I'll follow. And especially in terms of cancer, some places like, the National Cancer Institute, the National Institute of Health, all of those departments have their own Twitter handle too. So I'll follow those. And then if you're on Instagram, kind of doing the same thing. I usually will take, once a week, I'll take maybe 20 minutes out of my day or, to do that and go through and look for some different hashtags on who to follow. So you could, again, put in something like sarcoma survivor. I just did this the other day. And, I came across, I was kind of just scrolled until I found a few posts that I thought were interesting of people, and ended up following those people, but then I wanted to see who they were following. So, I'm not going to lie to you. It can get a little out of control, and the web can go very deep. So all of a sudden you've been on this for a long time. But if you set aside some time, I'll usually do, like, on a Monday, 15, 20 minutes every Monday to kind of look through, And the other important thing is, too, when you're on social media, also engage. Don't just post and then walk away. Make sure you engage with people, whether you're resharing their information or you're replying to them. Starting a conversation, that's a lot of what social media is, and it does help you get involved. So I've really noticed a difference in that in the last couple of months with me on Instagram. I have some people that, I kind of quote calling on my Instagram friends, but they have been amazing supporters during, for instance, my breast cancer diagnosis and treatment. And it's also been helpful because I've had a lot of cancer patients reach out to me, for instance, about the cold cap therapy to keep my hair. I've had numerous women reach out to me privately, just based on posts that I have done. Or I did one the other day, a couple weeks ago, on the Livestrong Fertility Assistance. I had numerous women reach out to me saying, I had no idea about this. Thank you for sharing. So again, just trying to engage is just as important as just posting too.
No, thank you. That's so helpful, and I think it's so great to hear all of the work that you do and the different ways that you can get involved in sharing your story, because I think a lot of times people, worry that the only way they can be involved in advocacy and sharing their story is coming to Washington, D.C. and Capitol Hill and meeting with their members of Congress, but there are a lot of other ways that you can get involved locally and online, and it's not always about a bill or health insurance coverage. Sometimes, you can advocate on behalf of your community by sharing those experiences. The fact that you were able to use the cold cap therapy and teach other people about it and where they can find it, that's so important.
Right.
I think it's really, it's great to hear all the work that you've done and see all these great examples of ways that everybody can get involved.
Thank you.
So I'll give one more shout out if anybody has any last minute questions. All right. Well, with that, thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you so much to Heather for sharing your story, for walking us through how we can effectively share our stories. And I think I speak for everybody when I say it's really exciting to hear your passion as you tell your story and you talk about the ways that you can get involved. And I hope that we can all come away inspired and new ideas for ways that we can share our own stories.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for everything that you do, too.
All right. Well, thank you. Have a great rest of your Monday, everybody.
Thank you. You too.